accessibility topic for this next video is going to be contrast and readability. This is one that's definitely within your wheelhouse if you're creating any sort of content within Canvas, whether that's a page, a test, announcements, discussions, assignments, anything where you're basically using that rich content editor. You're going to see a need to make sure you're paying mind to this. If you just go with the default settings, you should typically be in pretty good shape, but there are a few small things that you want to be on the lookout for. What do we mean when we're talking about contrast and readability? Basically, we want to make sure that the information, the text more often than not, that's on the screen is easily viewed by the user. And that could take into consideration both somebody with a disability and somebody without a disability. We don't want to make it any more difficult than it has to be for the person with normal vision, let alone the people that have a struggle there. So WCAG standards say that we need to have a minimum contrast of 4.5 to 1 for normal text, meaning anything that's smaller than 18 points or 14 point bolded, and 3.1 for larger text. What do we mean by that ratio? Basically just looking at the brightness of the foreground color, which is typically the text, and then the background color. It's measured on a scale of 1 to 1, being no contrast, and then a maximum contrast of 21 to 1. So again, that minimum requirement for normal text is a 4.5 to 1. If your font is 18 points or larger or 14 points and bolded or larger, then 3.1 is acceptable. And then 7 to 1 is considered excellent and meets the AAA standards, which we aren't required to do. However, that's an easy one where you can get into that AAA range. What do we have to take this into consideration? I kind of touched on this a little bit already, but students that have low vision, students with color blindness, struggle with that low contrast in text. When you change screen sizes, when you think about viewing this on a phone or a tablet potentially, or maybe even a smaller monitor, computer screen, they can make it difficult. Or even just you think about the lighting and bright lighting. Maybe I'm looking at this outside for some reason. That might make it even more difficult. And then just the general idea of visual fatigue. The more eye strain, the more difficult it does get to continue to read through materials. And then we're committing resources to the visual fatigue and not to thinking about the actual content that we're working on. You can see here some examples at the top, very faint, the hardest to read. That'd be like it's roughly a 1.14 to 1. And you see black text on a white background. That's the 21 to 1 that we had mentioned. And then because this text is over 18 point font, the pinkish one on the border there is 3.09, so it just barely makes our cutoff. And then our minimum, you can see, would be something like this. This is just over 4.5, which would be where we need it to be the minimum. And then AAA, this would be something that's just over 7 to 1, this green color. So obviously you can see, these aren't too difficult to read, but this is clearly the best. When you're using text, obviously you want to stick to, black text on a white background or vice versa, whenever you can. There are reasons that you might need to use color, but you just have to make sure that you pay attention to those parts of it. Looking at this in Canvas, you can see here we have just the word text in there a few times with some different colors. You can tell it gets a bit difficult to read on some of these. This one larger. Obviously, I assume we all know how to change the text color if we needed to. But again, here with our built-in accessibility checker, we see that there's 3 issues. We can tell right now there's only 4 things on this page, and this one looks like it's black text, so it's probably not that one. So we know which ones those are. But the nice thing is in the accessibility checker, we can make that adjustment right here without having to go through and figure out what it is. I can change the color altogether down here, or if I want to stick in this yellow family for whatever reason, I can do that. I just take the circle and start moving it, and you think, well, how do I know when it's good enough? You notice the apply button is grayed out down here. When I get to a point where it's acceptable, where I've hit my 4.5 to 1, it will switch over, and then I can select, and then it updates that right there on the screen. Same idea here. Maybe I decide that blue is not even where I need to be. I want to go over to something more purple. By doing that, it just made it darker. I've hit my 4.5. I can apply. And even this one, even though we are at a 24 point font, it's not enough to meet the minimum. At 3.1, probably relatively close. But if we drag down a little bit, same idea. We darken that up, and then we get the all clear on accessibility checker, and we are sure that our color contrasts hold up like they're supposed to. For do's and don'ts to recap, make sure we're using dark text on light backgrounds or vice versa. Make sure you test your color contrast with available tools. Obviously, you can use that accessibility checker that's built into Canvas that makes it real easy. But if you were working outside of Canvas and you weren't sure, if you just Google color contrast accessibility, you'll get a whole bunch of free tools that allow you to pick and choose and test out different setups. And then make sure you're keeping backgrounds simple and clean. It becomes difficult when you put text over the top of an image that has colors that change every few pixels, to make sure that you're constantly keeping your text contrast compliant. Hopefully that helps. It's pretty straightforward, but just some things to keep in mind. Make sure that you're checking your colors before you save your content in Canvas.